Good afternoon, 6-4 parents. Mr. Hagedorn here with our weekly update. Next week, pretty normal week. The only thing on Tuesday morning, we're going to have our last math NC check-in. That'll be just in the morning. Nothing kids need to do to prepare for it. We'll just run kind of a different schedule on Tuesday. The rest of the week's a normal week, though. All right, so in Math 6 next week, we just started our data and statistics unit. Started talking real quick just about kind of dot plots today and then about numerical and categorical data. We'll start getting into next week about what makes a good statistical question. We'll do a little more with dot plots, and we will start looking at some histograms as well next week. Right? In Math 6 Plus, we are finishing up our statistics and data unit. We'll do a little bit more with some histograms. We're going to really start focusing on box plots next week, talking more about mean, median, and mode. We will have our study guide next week and our quiz. That quiz right now is scheduled for Thursday. I wouldn't be surprised if that gets pushed back to Friday, though. We are a little bit behind right now in 6 Plus. Once we finish up that Unit 8, we're going to start our last unit of the year, our last 7th grade unit as well, which will be back to rational numbers, talking about negative numbers. We'll be focusing on multiplying and dividing negative numbers, though, in that Unit 7.5. Have a great weekend. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there, and we will see you on Monday.
All right, the way we celebrate Mother's Day is a soccer tournament. That's how we do things. Mean and average. They'll sound like so many dad jokes that can be put in there. But either way, next week in science, we are going to continue on the different ways that plants increase their survival rates. We went through photosynthesis, cellular respiration, and transpiration this week. We finished that off today. And then next week, we're going to start our final two things that plants use, which is known as dormancy and tropisms. Dormancy is pretty obvious. It's when those plants lose their leaves and they shelter down when the winter weather comes in, and then you have to rake all those leaves up. And then all of a sudden in spring, they sprout back up because the conditions have changed. Dormancies are a little bit cooler, though. Those are actually reactions in how plants move, like towards or away from light or water or different stimuli. And then we will finish off the week with a activity called the Hunger Games, which means kids are going to be making plants, and then they're going to have certain traits that they're going to choose from, and they're going to figure out, did the traits they choose, will they serve good in a competitive format against other people's plants in the arena? We're going to use a little bit of catch with the Hunger Games. We'll see who's last plant standing. There's always one in a group, and we'll see if that is your kids or not. Either way, ELA and social studies. Hopefully the weather is beautiful this weekend. Hopefully.
Should be. All right, friends, let's talk a little bit about language arts. So at this point in the year, we are on chapter 8 of Frightful's Mountain. On Monday, we will read chapter 9, and then on Wednesday, we will read chapter 10, and on Friday, I think we will read chapter 11. So we've kind of got 3 more chapters coming this week. We also talked today, we talked about this thing called cascading consequences. So we talked about an event and how that event leads to a consequence, but how that consequence then leads to the next consequence and cascades, and it's not just stopping at one thing. So we talked about kind of personal cascading consequences in class today with our grades. Then we talked about what would happen with characters from the book. And then next week, we'll be doing some more cascading consequences in our workbook based around DDT. And so the effects of DDT on the environment and how it cascades, how it moves through different things through the environment. So we're going to be using data that we've collected from earlier activities, and we're going to be talking about that throughout the week next week. That's what we're doing in language arts. In social studies class, we are continuing our conversation around the decline of civilization. So we did that this week. We've talked a little bit about the Indus River civilization and the Sumerians of Mesopotamia. We've been talking about Alexander the Great, how he got very, very big, very fast, but then fell apart. We're next week going to talk a little bit more about Alexander the Great, and then we're going to get into the Mongols, Genghis Khan, and probably the most famous fall in history, and that's the fall of Rome. So we'll talk a little bit about how the Romans fell apart. And as we finish that unit, we'll then get into our final unit, which is the Middle Ages, Renaissance, and Reformation, which gets it all the way through the end of the school year. So hopefully everything is going well. If you need anything, let us know. If not, have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next week.